All right, welcome to School Facilities and Operations. My name is Burke Jones, and I'm the host. And every week we have some really cool conversations with other K-12 facility operations people, um, and also those trade partners that support us, where we have them on and really ask them good questions about things we need to know. But today I am joined by Chris Crockett. He is the Director of Facilities for Turner USD 202, which is a suburb of the Kansas City metro area. Um, so, welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Bert.
Well, thank you for coming on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to the position you are today? And then I always ask everybody to tell us one thing about themselves that you wouldn't talk about on LinkedIn. So
Sure.
something fun, some hobby, or something like that.
Oh goodness. Okay, so my story on my path is probably somewhat unique. So straight out of high school, I went to work for a pizza restaurant and continued to work for them for about 15 years. And obviously became a manager and a leader on that team. And it was a really good experience, but I began to get bored with it and started doing some remodeling and things like that. And actually left the company to do my own thing with remodeling, and that was in 2008, 2009, which is when everything collapsed. So in a pinch, after going through some really tough times, I reached out to a friend that I had met through the construction process, who happened to be the director of facilities at KU on the housing side. And I landed a job with that team as a on-call type sub at $10.50 an hour or something ridiculous. And then landed a full-time role with them. I was with KU for about a year and a half, and I had lived in Topeka at the time and was spending about $400 a week or a month in gas going back and forth between Lawrence and Topeka. And a position opened up at Auburn Washburn as a plumber, which is the school district I graduated from. And I
Okay.
thought that would be really unique and neat. So I went to my supervisor, Doug Carter at KU, and said, "Hey, I'm going to put in for this position." He said, "Well, I'm a member of KADPF. I know Rich Jones. I'll put in a word for you, and hopefully that helps." Long story short, I got the job. Loved working for Auburn Washburn. It was a wonderful, wonderful job. They put me through HVAC school as a plumber, and then as I was graduating from HVAC school, a position opened up as a energy specialist. So I put in for that position, landed it, and after I had that program going so smooth, I started assisting Rich on managing projects and all of that, and became his right hand person for a few years. And Turner actually reached out to KDPF wanting to advertise their facility director opening on the website. And that is, I said, fine, I'm going to put it on the website, but I'm going to also put in for the job. And 6 years later, here I am. So it, that I was explaining to you previously why I'm so passionate about the KDPF, Kansas Association of Plant Facility Directors organization. That's why.
Right. So were you on the board at
So I
that time?
was, yeah. So when I became the energy specialist, I attended the conference with Rich, and I said, "Wow, this is really neat. I'd like to get involved." And I became the media coordinator for quite a few years. In fact, until last year when Scott Bennett from Bonner took it over, I was the media coordinator for KPF.
Okay.
So I'm currently the president, which is
Okay.
crazy to say.
Yeah, we'll come back to that for a little bit. But
Sure.
so what's something about what do you like to do when you're not working or
So I've got 10-year-old twins, so they keep me very, very busy. Love spending time with them. Um, yeah, that just between kids and work. I mean, the time we have to put in, and it just that pretty much consumes me.
yeah. Well, I think you got a fascinating story on how you ended up here. What I've found talking to everybody is that there is 1,000 ways to work your way towards one of these roles like we're in.
Absolutely.
And it's really fascinating, just the different paths people take. Um, and it really makes me think. Like I look around my shop and my, you know, my maintenance team, and like who could like, is there a guy out there right now that could like come up through the ranks and want to do
Sure.
something more? So
No, and I'm constantly looking for the same thing. I have, folks on my grounds team, folks on my custodial team that, I mean, quite honestly, they could do my job. They couldn't do it to the level I do it, but they could get there. And I'm
right.
constantly looking for those people to develop. And one of the things about being a leader is you're never afraid of being replaced. You're always trying to, help other people succeed and learn more.
Yeah. Have you ever read The Five Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell?
I have. Yeah, so yeah, I follow that quite a bit. So
Yeah.
when I first came to Kansas City, for the first year and a half, I commuted. So I had 2 hours each day, and I listened to a lot of audiobooks and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff on leadership, a lot of John Covey, a lot of that stuff.
Well, I just finished reading it. I never read it. But if anybody out there is like struggling to figure out how to lead, I think it should be a mandatory book because a
I
lot of
agree.
leadership books, they're just like kind of this pie in the sky kind of stuff. But this actually almost gives you a roadmap on how to move from like a level one, like the only reason people follow you is because you have the title,
Hmm.
how to move up to the next level and the next level and the next level until you're like generating your own leaders.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, so a couple of other great ones. So after I interviewed at Turner, I stopped back at KU, kind of nostalgically, revisited Doug and let him know what I was doing. And he asked what type of leader I was. And I said, well, or I think he may have said manager. And I said, well, I don't know what you're trying to get to. And he said, here, I want you to read this book. And I think he gave me the book, but it's Leadership and Self-Deception. I highly recommend that book. And then Strengths Finder is another really, really good one.
okay. Well, fantastic. Well, I'm trying to read, um, well, a couple reasons. One, I set a goal for myself to read 10 pages a day this year because I like to read. I just never take the time to read. So I
Sure.
set that goal. And then I'm doing this kind of, I won't really call it a fitness program, but it kind of is this thing called 75 Hard, where basically you work out and drink so much water and this whole thing for 75 days. But one of the requirements is to read 10 pages a day. So I'm making it through a lot of books.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind really quick, I know can I kind of get off the subject a little bit? So when we were talking prior to this about the the conference coming up for KDPF in October, one of the other things that I want at least one of the sessions to focus on is self-help and self-help. Um, Folks in our roles, there is a um, staggering number of heart attacks, of not healthy habits. So to hear you doing that, that's amazing. Part of it is, as someone that wants to preach a mission or whatever, you want to live by example. So I've thought about that for about the last month on, how can I get healthier? How can I, in October, be in a better place than I am now, and say, not only am I saying you need to do this, I'm doing it myself.
Yeah.
So I'm going to check out what you just mentioned.
Well, I like to eat way more than I like to work out. So,
Right there with you.
but 75 hard is an interesting thing. I mean, just a brief rundown is it's two 45-minute workouts a day. Um, one of them has to be outside. Now, when you say workouts, like sometimes, most of the time, I just walk twice a day for 45 minutes,
That's
you know.
fantastic.
But like this morning, it was 12 degrees and -2 wind chill, and I was walking my dog for 45 minutes. But it's really cool because like you kind of feel like a stud because you're like the only person out there, right? Like everybody else is inside still. And then one day it was pouring rain, had still did it, you know.
Good for
So
you.
you got to read 10 pages a day, drink a gallon of water a day, follow some kind of a diet. Now that it doesn't have to be like some extreme thing. It's just like, hey, you could just say, I'm gonna be intentional about what I'm eating.
Mhm.
Like, and then no alcohol.
I'm
So,
done. I'm gonna have to look through your program. Sorry, Bert.
but
I would love to jump on board, but that's a tough one.
it is, and I'm not, yeah, I like a glass of bourbon once a week, but I'm not doing that right now. So, um, and the idea is, it's really just about, I think more than getting in shape is just about being, increasing your mental toughness and your discipline.
Sure.
But I'm on
Yourself first.
16 or 17 so
I'm
far.
sorry.
So, yeah,
Oh,
I'm
you're
on
on day 16 or
about
17?
17 days into it, I think.
Good for
Um,
you.
so it's been good. But anyway, yeah, I like your idea because we have high stress positions and work a lot, and I don't know about you, but I don't take a whole lot of lunch breaks, and um,
And
so
that's part of it, right? I mean, we get so tied up in our day, we put ourselves into a rut, and we're 2 hours past lunch, we're starving, so we swing through a McDonald's. Um,
exactly.
Regardless of all the intentions, it would take the same amount of time to walk into a Subway and get a takeout sandwich. But it's so much easier just to hit the drive-through.
Absolutely. Yep. So what's going on at Turner? You said earlier you're coming off a bond. Um, Give me
I would,
that and how you guys have kind of stretched some of that money a little bit
yeah.
further.
So we passed a bond in 2019 to build a new middle school. And part of that strategy was, so we asked the community for the money to build the middle school and about another 30% to do capital improvements. So the total of the bond was 41 million. 31 was for the middle school, 10 was for capital improvements. And at the same time, we wanted to build a new stadium, a new football field, soccer field. Um, so what we did, because I think you can build a stadium with bond funds, but if you do, you don't get state aid. So we used our capital improvement budget to build the stadium and offset that with the bond revenue to do capital improvements.
Okay.
That makes sense. So we got the state aid. Now you have to be very, very careful to not spend a single bond dollar on that project, which we were
Right.
cautious on. And then, build the middle school. So in the last 4 years, we've built a new middle school, spent almost $12 million on a stadium that is just incredible. It's got the most gorgeous view. You can actually, we're not that far from the Legends and the Speedway, but from the stadium, you can see the Speedway. Uh,
Oh, that's cool.
so it's just really cool, neat setting. Um, but then, as we all know, we've gone through ESSER funds. We've gone through lots of different revenue sources that we didn't see coming in 2019. So we were able to stretch that $10 million approved in the bond through ESSER and all of that other to at least 12 million. And I say that because we just within the last 2 weeks got approved for a $1.7 million ESSER project. Our high school is set up with 175 water source heat pumps. Yeah, it sucks. So the high school was built in 2000. So all of those water source heat pumps are 23 years old. Not all
Right.
of them, but a majority of them. So we are going through this summer and replacing 110 of those units with that $1.7 million. That's just one of 110 different capital improvement projects we have going this summer.
Wow.
It's nuts. So it would be easier to say what's not going on at Turner.
Yeah.
But if you want to know my opinion, what I'm most proud of since I came on the team in 2017 is the improvement in our appearance as far as facilities. Our grounds team has been night and day from 2017 to now. We've got them a lot of equipment. A lot of the staff has changed out to more qualified staff. And our appearance probably went from on a 10 scale, I would say from a 5 or 6 to an 8 or 9. It's amazing. Really
Yeah.
nice community to drive around.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because it's really, that's your, like we've talked about it on other episodes, like our front door.
Mhm.
Like, what do I see when I pull into the parking lot? What do I see when I walk to the front door? It kind of tells me the way the building's also going to be maintained.
Absolutely. So in 2019, maybe, Dr. Brenda Dietrich, who was the former superintendent at Auburn Washburn, current Kansas senator, I believe. She was our keynote speaker at the conference. And when I worked at Auburn Washburn, I knew that she was very adamant about no dandelions anywhere in our district. And I never understood it. And I thought maybe she just had a hang up on dandelions. So I asked her that question, and she actually talked about it in her keynote speech. The school buildings set the tone for the community. So the appearance of the school building dictates to a lot of the homeowners and community members how they should maintain their buildings, their
Um,
houses. So, if the schools look great, they're going to keep the yards cut, they'll take care of their weeds. And I'll be darned, it's 100% accurate.
how many buildings do you guys have? Like,
We have 9, including a recreation community center, which was formerly, I believe, the high school.
okay,
It was built, I want to say, it just turned 100 years old. So it was built in the 1920s.
okay. So you guys applying a lot of weed killer in the spring then to get rid of all the dandelions?
We actually, we do spread some broadleaf treatment, but we've actually found a way to maintain it through, and I'd have to get my grounds guys, but we found a way to maintain it through, just fertilizing and overseeding and all of that stuff.
Right.
And if you keep it well groomed and aerated and all of that, the weeds
Yeah, it sure does.
aren't as prevalent.
Yeah. So you're over maintenance, grounds, and facilities, basically.
Custodial, yeah. Yeah, so I've got about 60 folks that report to me.
Okay.
Not directly, there are some buffers in there. I've got 9 head custodians, 8 night lead custodians. So my head custodians work during the day. The night
Right.
leads oversee the teams at night. I've got a ground supervisor, a maintenance supervisor, and then I'm very blessed. It's kind of a unique position that I created. Our head custodian at the high school was here for 40 years and retired. And after his capers waiting time, I hired him back as a part-time. And actually now he's in a full-time role, but he helps manage all the custodial services throughout the district.
Oh, wow.
I'm very, very blessed.
Yeah.
I'm I'm not going to be popular when I state this, but we are also fully staffed.
Well,
So
that's good. I've been on a hiring spree the last couple weeks, and
that's awesome.
we are basically, I think I've got one spot, like one head custodian role that I still need to fill, but it just became available. So,
I technically have 2 openings on custodial services, but I have 7 substitutes that I can call on anytime. So I consider it fully staffed. But,
yeah, I would consider that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's
you know,
fantastic.
on that note, one of the ways that I got through COVID, so back in 2018, we started hiring. We've always hired subs over the summer. So we hire about 20 to 25. In 2018, we started hiring high school students to help us over the summer. And then some of those folks ended up staying on as on-call subs throughout the school year. So when the
Yeah.
school gets out, they can stay at the building and help clean it, or catch a ride to one of the elementaries and help there. At one point, I had like 15 on-call subs through 2020 and 21. And that really, really helped. There were several times that I would have a whole team out on the high school team, 7 custodians out because they met in a room and somebody popped positive with COVID and they all had to quarantine. And it's
Right.
like, guys, I've asked you not to be in the same room, but they still did it. And we were able to make it through with that. It was really remarkable.
That is remarkable. I think what's turned the corner for us is we've started advertising on Indeed. So
Really?
we put our job postings on there. They still have to apply on our district
Mhm.
website, but I just basically email everybody that looks interesting to me. I just like, hey, you need to apply on our district website, but I want to go ahead and schedule an interview with you. Please call my assistant. And even if they haven't applied when I interview them, they can just do it right there while we're talking if they want to. So
Nice.
I figured just get people in the door and start talking to them
Yep.
and reduce the number of hoops they have to jump through
And
initially.
I don't know about your district, but it can take me 3 weeks to get somebody through from the door to on board.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
March is going to be terrible because we have one board meeting. Um,
Oh, we don't have to take them to a board meeting, but it's just by the time they get their physical and their TB test and the background check, it's 2 weeks at the fastest.
every single one of mine has to go through board before they can start. So
Oh, wow.
if I interview somebody March 10th, they can't start until the second Wednesday or first Wednesday in April, whatever that looks like.
Oh,
That's
wow.
crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. So, um, capital outlay. Do you guys, one thing I'm struggling with, and I'll pick your brain about, is, let's say I have like a 800,000, I don't know. I'll just say I think it's probably an $800,000 mechanical project.
Mhm.
Are you having engineers like design everything early and then sending those out to a contractor to get some real pricing like the year before?
It's
And
complicated, right? I mean, because our capital improvement plans, depending on how your district operates, they could have, mine was approved back in August. And we've seen a tremendous spike since then. So, and I'm sorry, we were seeing a tremendous spike prior to then.
right,
But if you look back in 2019, when I was trying to project out, replacing a chiller was going to be $150,000, and now it's 250.
right,
You just didn't see that coming. So what I have to do in that situation is justify to the board and the superintendent, hey, this project is really, really important, and we're gonna have to cut this other project that we planned on doing because it's coming in over.
right.
I've got plenty of examples of that just from this year. Um, that it's just, there's a lot that's expected of us. Not only are we supposed to know how to manage the folks and deal with employee situations and know what needs to happen to make the day run smoothly and not have an impact on the classroom, to being able to project budgets and manage projects. It's insane the stuff that falls on us. So I just think there has to be some grace there.
Yeah,
And certainly in these times, folks understand. I had a rooftop unit on one of the elementaries that controls the office area, thank goodness. It went down at the end of the school year last year, and the motor for that unit literally took 90 days to get in.
yeah,
So that area was without cooling for that period of time. And I said,
right.
goodness, because I'd rather have it be the office than the classrooms.
Yeah, I know. Because I'm hearing like 7, 8, 9, 10 ton rooftop units. If you order it today, you'll get it in September.
Right. That
I
doesn't
mean,
work for us.
that scares me to death.
Yeah, it should. So when that rooftop unit went down, I was literally looking at it. It's only 5 years old, but I was like, hey, if we can get a new unit quicker than we can get the motor, let's do that.
Right,
I had, mechanical contractors all around Kansas City checking their yards to see if they had one.
right.
But yeah, ended up, we just had to wait.
Yeah. So all that ESSER money, all those have to be prevailing wage projects, right?
Absolutely, yes. So that's a very, very important thing, because it almost slipped by us. Um, one of the things you have to do with the capital ESSER project is ask your engineer or someone to sign off on one sheet of paper that says you're going to follow these 5 rules. And when I sent it to the engineer, he's actually designed a ton of other projects across the state of Kansas. But when I sent it to him, he was like, I'm gonna check into this. So he looked up those 5 bullet points. And one of them was that all of the projects have to follow the Davis-Bacon Act, meaning that they all have to be union wages.
Right.
And I had already bid the project before we found this out. We submitted our whole package to the state, and they said, "Oh, you're missing this one sheet. Just have somebody sign off on it." So that engineer called me that next day, and he's like, "Hey, this isn't great." And I said, "Okay." So what we ended up doing, we had literally just had the bid open. And I couldn't just reach out. It was the bid opening. There were three bidders, 2 union, 1 non-union, and the non-union was the lowest bid, and they were all qualified. So in order to make sure that we handled it appropriately, we just rebid it in another week and said, you have to follow the Davis-Bacon Act. You all know each other's numbers, do your best. And actually, what ended up transpiring, a whole new vendor jumped in the mix and ended up winning it.
Oh,
But
wow.
they're a union shop and they had the lowest number, so away we go. It
That's
actually,
it.
it actually saved us $200,000.
Huh.
It went from 1.7 to 1.5.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
crazy stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you
it's
never.
very important. So once we found out about the Davis-Bacon Act, we reached out to KSDE. Dean, who is the head of purchasing with federal funds for KSDE, we jumped on a call. And he said that what's happening is a lot of the districts are, jumping into these projects and they're going to follow up, they're going to get caught in an audit down the road. And we
Right.
don't know what that penalty is going to be. But it's not going to be pretty, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, because there's probably is people out there doing it without following that. Because in
Right,
Kansas, for people in other parts of the country, unions are probably much more prevalent. But in the state of Kansas, they're not.
right.
Like it's just not.
Well, and that's the thing, that's the federal part, right? So the ESSER funds are all federal money, and
Right.
I did not realize the huge difference between using federal funds and not using federal funds.
Right. Yeah, it's a big one. Well, anything else we ought to cover off here?
Oh my goodness. It's totally your call.
Let's
We
talk
could
about,
probably talk the rest of the day on different subjects, right?
I think let's talk a little bit about just a few minutes about the importance of being a part of an organization like
Sure.
KDPF and why, us being involved in that you think is a good thing and maybe it should be like required or.
Yeah, and required seems like a strong one, right? But
Right.
I think that one of the most important things is just developing that network um, of other districts around you. We're all super busy and we all are pushed for time every single day. But to take a couple hours and network with the local districts is huge. It's not
Yeah.
only huge educationally, it's huge emotionally. Just to share all the stuff you're going through with somebody else that's in the same shoes is very releasing and relaxing.
Yeah.
The conference in October every year has always been great. The vendors there's always new technology, new equipment. Um, you know, I, One example of a conference that was super successful, in my opinion, personally. I was walking the trade show floor and saw that one of the vendors had a Siemens sign up. And at the time, I had a bunch of Airco boilers that were going through an issue with the safety shutoff valve failing. And to buy that from the person that distributes the boilers, it's a $4,000 part. I was like, hey, can you get these by chance? And he said, well, let me get back to you. About 20 minutes later, he chased me down in a different part of the trade show and he's like, hey, I can get those for $1,200. And I was like, I'll take 4 of them right now. And I called the office, got a PO. He made a $5,000 sale right there on the floor. Uh,
Right.
and I saved my district a ton of money.
Right.
And they kept that contact, and now they're saving money continuously,
Yeah.
just through that one thing. So not only are the breakout sessions informational, I think that there's a lot of stuff that comes from just the networking, from the vendors to members, but also just amongst the vendors and amongst the members. The network that we create is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been, I mean, I think I was telling you earlier, I've been here 3 years, but I've only made it to one of the conference between COVID and some other scheduling conflicts. But I'm really looking forward to this year. Now that I'm a little more ingrained in my
So
role, and getting to know some other people from around the state, I think it'll be a ton of fun.
you bet. Yeah. So this year is going to be, I mean, we're focusing very, very heavily. We've reflected quite a bit the last couple of years on what do we offer, the members or the vendors throughout the year. And when the answer was, we do a conference every October, that wasn't really a great answer, right? So we're starting to create, multiple lunch and learns throughout the year. We're putting out a newsletter. It's more often than quarterly, but that's our goal is to do it minimally every quarter. But there is a newsletter that's getting ready to come out probably next week at this point, because tomorrow's Friday. And I helped put that together. But one of the things we're announcing is that at the lunch on Monday during this conference, we're going to bring in a guest speaker, and that's Dr. Randy Watson, the Commissioner of Education for the state of Kansas. So it's going to be, we're really, really proud of that, regardless of political views. He is the Commissioner for Education for the state of Kansas, and should give us a really good speech.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super exciting because I think anytime we can get someone at that level to recognize the work we do, um,
Absolutely.
is priceless.
And to speak to that, one of the things that we've discussed for years is developing the accreditation program like Missouri has.
Yep.
The thing that we struggle with is how do we make it tangible, and how do we make it powerful or have an impact on our positions. We are kind of slow rolling that because NSPMA, the National School Plant Managers Association, is supposed to be coming out with curriculum. So we wouldn't have to develop it from day one. But we'll see how that goes. Regardless, building the relationship with KSDE offers us an opportunity to ask them in the future, hey, will you endorse this?
Right. Right.
So,
I think it's a fantastic thing. I think there's some in the northeast part of the United States. I think there's some states up there that have a similar,
mhm.
like a certification or
In fact, in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, it's
yeah,
required to be in our
yeah,
position. You have to have that accreditation.
yeah, which I'm okay with that. I think anything
No,
that can elevate the profession,
I wouldn't
provide
be here.
a
I
level of
wouldn't be
training.
here because I'm not certified, but I agree with you. I would love to get certified.
Yeah,
I remember my very first day here, the person I replaced said, I cannot believe they didn't make sure you were a certified uh, facilities manager. And I said, well, they didn't. In fact, nobody probably knows that I don't have a college degree. Barely got out of high school, honestly, but I have a trade school degree.
right.
But regardless, everything's worked out great for me
Yeah,
and for the
yeah,
district.
yeah. Well, like I say, I saw your talk a couple years ago at the conference, and as we were coming out of COVID, and um, I think that's the first time and only time we've ever met. But I was impressed with what you did there.
Well, thank you. I try to make sure I put plenty of research into what I talk about before I talk about it. Because once it comes out of your mouth, it's really hard to take back.
Exactly. Well, I wrap up every episode by asking everybody the same three questions. So, kind of a rapid fire. You don't have to elaborate unless you want to, but so what would your family say that you do for a living?
So interestingly enough, I listened to a lot of your podcasts before this, and I listened to them over the last few days. And I knew this was coming. So last night when my daughter and I were, my 10-year-old daughter we were heading to pick up dinner. I said, hey, Claire, what would you say I do for a living? And she thought about it really hard. And she said, well, you're on the board of directors for a school, and you deal with a lot of people, in a lot of situations and you fix a lot of stuff. So at 10, she's pretty much nailed it. I said, well, I'm not on the school board. And she said, no, you work for the school board. And I said, okay, you got it. So
That's
she
good.
nailed
For a 10-year-old, I'd say she nailed it.
it. Yeah.
Especially the you fix a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Constantly.
So, do you use a paper planner or are you digital?
I am 100% a mess and I use both. Um, I prefer digital because it's always there. That being said, I just within the last week got a new computer and my old hard drive was corrupted or whatever. So a lot of the stuff that was on that is gone. But I transfer a lot of it via email and things, so I'm able to download it and I'll be fine. But I do keep a paper trail for one of the probably more unique things I do is the way I prepare for audits. So when my capital improvement plan gets approved, I start a book and every RFP, every advertisement, every PO goes in that book, categorized. And then when the auditor comes, they get the book and they're able to find everything they need. This year it's 3 books, but literally so far we're thinking about adding a 4th.
Wow. Yeah, you guys have a busy year then.
It's crazy.
So, do you get your best work done? What time of the day do you get your best work done?
The only time of the day that I don't get my work done is in the morning. And I've heard everybody else say I get up bright and early. I am a terrible morning person. I get a lot more work done between 10 o'clock at night and 1 in the morning than I do any other part of the day.
Yeah.
Because of the family and work, my day pretty much, I take the kids to school every morning. So I don't get in until about 8:30. And I give the district everything I have until about 4 o'clock, and then I head home and give my family everything I have, and then I go back to work.
Yeah.
So I get, 5, 6 hours of sleep a night, but yeah, it's always one thing or the other.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us
Thanks for
today.
having me.
I think this was a really fun kind of round robin, or I don't know, flowing
Hopefully,
conversation.
hopefully somebody takes something out of it. That's all that matters.
Well, we covered enough topics. Somebody should enjoy at least one part of this.
I hope.
Yeah. Well,
I
thank
know
you,
that
Chris.
you usually ask about contact information.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to reach out to me, I think you put my email down there, but my cell number is the best way to reach me.
Okay.
Anybody is more than welcome to call whenever. My cell number is 785-250-4590.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and have a great week.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it very much. Take care.